Hello there. Welcome back to another installment of my ranting. I'm just going to kind of wing it as per usual. I guess the first thing I'll start off with is I kind of covered this somewhat in some previous installments, a little bit here and a little bit there. But I want to talk about energy and the qualities of the energy that we have a capacity to produce and to use as well. Now, there have been a lot of good ideas that people have come up with, to advance, technologically advance our species and, that make some things easier. We've been able to make things that are more convenient and comfortable, which, I would think that most people would say, hey, that's a good thing. And basically, what has produced that was an intelligence and the manual labor and energy that we all put out, that we work, we produce something, whether it be watching bottles travel down the assembly line, or if it's actually, or the conveyor belts, or actually building that conveyor belt to building a business that provides or sells those products that are moving down the conveyor line, and so forth and so on, like those systems within systems. And for the most part, the driving force, and I don't like using the word force, but the driving energy behind that pretty much starts with this, what I call pseudo energy. And a lot of people would argue that, hey, well, we wouldn't have gotten to where we are as quick as we have if it wasn't for, this representation of what we're led and conditioned to believe holds value. Now, I won't argue that, there's been a considerable amount of accomplishments, good and bad, caused or due to this pseudo-currency. And, if you look around, was it Illinois bankrupt? Poof. New Jersey, state of emergency, bankrupt, poof. And any of these systems in the past, throughout history, that use this pseudo energy, eventually the pseudo energy becomes realized for what it is, and it's fake energy, and people lose confidence in it. But as well, it has conditioned, regardless of the idea of the pseudo energy, has the pseudo energy, the currency itself has failed. Regardless, there's always been another currency, another pseudo currency to take the failed currency's place. And we end up again with this system, that is responsible for a lot of hardship that our species here on Earth, the human beings, has been been responsible for a lot of suffering, a lot of hardships, a lot of pain, a lot of anguish, a little, and probably a fair amount of limited pleasures, okay? And yeah, people say, oh, well, I was able, my dad, my grandfather, my grandparents, whoever, great-grandparents, whatever, they were able to purchase a house and furnishings for the house and provide food for me to eat, and our tax money went to provide for an education, a public education that they'll make up. Well, it's not made up, but they will refer to these instances. But I want to say, and I'd like to say, bring up that if we were not led to or conditioned to believe that this is some type of device developed by God, because it says on all of these pieces of paper that in God we trust. But actually, we get further and further and trust less and less of God, and I think that a lot of people have a very bad taste in their mouth for a lot of, these organized religions and whatnot, because a lot of these, I would say most of them, as far as in the Western world, they're not, they haven't been teaching people how to actually understand what this concept of God is and how to understand themselves. They'll say, oh, well, read the Bible, read this passage, this, verse or whatever, and, just going about, keep on going with it. But the Bible isn't necessarily a literal account of physical actions that actually took place. Now, I'm sure there's quite a bit that is, but considering how the Bible was put together and by who and whatnot, from what I've read and listened to and studied and researched, they're really allegorical descriptions of something. And that's something, if you go back to the words of, or supposedly what Jesus, some of the things that he actually said, they're not, in my opinion, I don't believe that what these people are teaching or trying to relay an understanding of, in their whatever places of worship, they're not delving very deep in it, because you have to understand that if they were, those churches wouldn't exist. Those places of worship would not exist. And as an example, one of the things that Jesus, this character, and that's another thing, Jesus is was basically, that wasn't his original name. And I'll let you research that and find out what his name was. And I wouldn't rely just on one resource for finding that out and doing your research. But anyway, Jesus wasn't his original name, if indeed these were factual events and factual people and whatnot. But I think there's a lot of good lessons to be learned from the Bible. I'm more actually a very spiritual person, not necessarily a religious person. And that's why I think that a lot of these organized religions or whatever, at least in the West, if you don't toe the line, believe in what's being said and preached and relayed to you, and you question it, then you're pretty much ostracized from the group, and you're susceptible to a lot of ridicule, discrimination, and whatnot. And people eventually end up leaving that group, and they may go to another one, or they just come to the decision that, hey, this that mess just isn't for me. And I've never been one to really follow the crowd or whatever. I've been kind of somewhat of a rebel or a revolutionary or whatever. I think that's, both of those words are a bit strong, but I've always contemplated what I have experienced and seen go on around me, and watching the environment around me and the people around me, and reading or doing research and all. And as I had said in an earlier installment, it didn't, from what I was told how things were when I was a young child, things just didn't seem to be, what I was told just didn't seem to be accurate for whatever reason, and that prompted me to ask questions. And I kept asking questions, and I still do, until I get a satisfactory answer or get my head wrapped around whatever the issue is, that I'm trying to figure out. So, without rambling on, we have currency, this pseudo energy, which is a facsimile of energy. On a fax machine, when they were real popular, and you'd send a fax would get sent from one fax machine to another, and you put a nice printed piece of paper in, it's clearly legible and everything, and you run it through the fax machine, and it gets transmitted over to another fax machine somewhere, and the facsimile, the copy of what you had originally sent over there, you look at it, and it's lost a lot of quality. It will have lost a lot of quality, and the type isn't neat, and some things, if they're pictures or whatever, they're just all almost distorted, and so it's not a good quality, not a good copy of whatever the paper is that you're sending. Now, I consider this a facsimile of energy, okay? Because it really doesn't, it doesn't have the same qualities as genuine, authentic energy that we produce, okay? So, I just think this is it hasn't been a good thing for mankind. I think that we could have gotten to where we are right now, and well, I'll take that back. We would have never gotten to this point as far as the selfishness and the greed and the chaos and the lack of compassion and the environment like that, if we hadn't depended on some type of facsimile of energy. I think we would have figured things out a while back, and we would have been living in a much better quality environment for everybody that is existing now on this planet, okay? And really, another thing about religions is that You know, they say, oh, they're for the good, you know, to bring humanity together and all. Well, I just want to say in the Western world that we've had a very long time as compared to a human life, which, you know, I don't know what the average is, let's say between 50 and 80 years old. You know, we all, if we're fairly healthy or whatever, most of us, or more and more people now, are living to be, you know, 70, 80 years old or so, and some are living to be over 100. But that's still not a common, an average for the human being's life. But, you know, within that, all this time that we've had, and I'll refer back to one of the previous installments, just over the past 100 years. We've had 100 years in where are actually not really a lot better off health-wise and spiritual-wise than we were 100 years ago. And why is that? Why are we not, you know, I mean, we were flying basically in 1903. You know, we have the ability to orbit the planet. You know, to send things out to, you know, to being very close to the sun, you know, and stuff like that. But yet, as I've said, we're still fighting and bickering, killing each other over resources that, you know, give us or allow us to accumulate more of these this pseudo energy. And it's such an unbalanced system compared to the population of the planet, you know, over 7 billion, 7.2 billion or more. And there's a very, very small percentage of that total population that really, you know, they have been able to actually live a life of total whatever they want to do. They have access to better health care. They have access to more comforts. You know, they have the ability to, they wield a lot of power and influence to, you know, be able to get things done, you know, and I think that plays a lot into their ego for whatever reasons. But the majority of the people are struggling, you know. There's always going to be struggles, but there's no need for such a hard struggle, you know, and we're talking about kids, you know, young kids, children, and they, you know, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible, and for the amount of money that some of these the small percentage of the wealthiest people on this planet, they have enough money where they don't have to ever worry about not having enough money as things are today. So, you know, and there's some of these so-called philanthropists, you know, people that are out to improve humanity or whatever. A lot of them, from what I've read, I can't say for sure, but from what I've read, they actually believe that the planet can't sustain the amount of population that is here now, and that there needs to be some type of reduction in the population. And if you look around and you see what's going on, it seems that there are some that have been are fairly successful at coming up with techniques and whatnot that that is reducing the population, and that as time goes on will reduce the population even further. And again, this doesn't make sense to me because of the technology that I know that is available. That for one, we could straighten out a lot of these issues, but because of these resources and the acquisition of how the resources are acquired and so forth and so on, and because of organized religions to some degree, that we don't, we're at odds with these other human beings. And, and we've had all this time and there has been no progress really made in that. And you have the people, I mentioned it in another video, that, a lot of these people are like, that's the way it is, that's the way it has been, that's the way that it always will be. Because for the most part, they've been conditioned, if they aren't the upper echelon, the very, very wealthy or whatever, they've been brought up in an environment and they feel they've been disempowered. They've been conditioned to believe that they don't have the ability, the energy, the power to make those changes. And the way that, for the most part, Western society is structured, everything that we do is basically something to perpetuate one of these systems within a system that is not does not have any long-term benefits for the average person. And we've been conditioned to think and believe that way, and to continue supporting and perpetuating those types of systems. We need a paradigm shift. There's absolutely an abundance of whatever we may need, but we are conditioned with this economic system, worldwide, that there is a scarcity, and it's a false scarcity, because if we have the technology available, but governments, I guess for whatever reason, and there's always these machinations within these systems and these people that wield that power and influence within these systems, that they don't want any change. They don't want things really necessarily to get better, because I guess they're conditioned to think, well, if it's better for these people, then that means it's not going to be as good, for me. And you know how they say poo-poo rolls downhill? And see, they have that attitude, that opinion, that perspective. So that perspective, opinion, attitude, whatever, it rolls downhill to everybody else that is below them. Not everybody, but the majority of the people. And we need to rethink these things. And I feel that one of the most important things that we can do to start making those changes is to understand ourselves better, to have the curiosity, to find out, why is it like that? Start asking the questions and find out for ourselves, why do we think this, and why do we believe certain things? Believe whatever you want, but if you can't explain, if you can't explain why you believe something, then maybe you need to look a little further into it until you find, the answers that you need, or the information that you need to understand why you believe something. Because beliefs are one thing, having faith is another thing, and thinking is even another thing. You know, when you believe something, you know, you're confident in whatever, and you may believe something just because somebody you trusted, or somebody or a resource that you trusted, you know, told you, hey, this is the way it is, and blah blah blah. Well, that's one thing about me. For the most part, when somebody said, well, read this, or this is the way it is, and I would say, well, why? And they would give me an answer, but it wouldn't really necessarily give me the information that I was looking for to understand why it was, you know, why that answer was given. So I would look into it and, you know, do my research. And I have found that a lot of people cannot answer the question when I ask them, why do you believe that? The depth of that answer is, well, because so-and-so said that, or that's what so-and-so said, or that's what was in this book, or what have you. And so from previous experiences, and I continue to do this, but from previous experiences, I've looked in, you know, I've read that book, listened to this person, whatever, looked for some more information on it, and I've discovered that for me, I understand more about the answer that the person gave me, but I've also discovered that for me it wasn't the correct answer, and it wasn't the answer that I was looking for. So I've been, you know, most of my life just, you know, seeking and all, and when I was younger, I was hard-headed, hot-headed, you know, did things the way I wanted to do them, and I paid a heavy price for it. But I don't regret any of it, because without those experiences, I wouldn't have the knowledge and the understanding, the comprehension of what I have experienced. And I don't think I would have been able to put the value that I do on my knowledge. You know, everybody has their own experiences and their own, you know, their own way that they need to come about their own answers. But that energy, there is, you know, back to the scarcity. You know, this is scarce, even though the Fed is they're printing it up, you know, and whatever. But as they print more and more up, this loses more and more value. You know, but your energy, you know, that's a very high value. It doesn't lose value. You know, now I guess considering what your position or perspective is, to me, if I was to just change my ways and say, I don't care, I'm just going to do whatever, and start being a very greedy and selfish person, then yeah, I would say that my energy was losing value. But I don't foresee myself doing that, and I don't plan on doing it. And it's taken me a lifetime so far to come to the understanding and gain the knowledge that I have. So I'm not going to throw it away. I may not be as comfortable as I want to be, or I would like to be. There are a lot of things, experiences that I would still like to have, but you know, there's a good possibility that I won't be able to do them because I'm not willing to betray myself by the experiences I've had and the knowledge that I've gained from that and the understanding to, accumulate more of these that are losing more and more value by the day. Now, the country, America, and even the world, we're getting into a pretty not a good situation as far as the currency, the world currencies and the economic systems, financial systems. And that's another thing. These bankers and the politicians and all of this, these big moguls, just these people that just have so much money and everything. If they were so smart, how is it that things have just steadily seem to have degraded for the human experience, for the average person's human experience, unless it's to just because all of the wealth is being transferred to these people that already have lots and lots and lots and lots of resources and control and everything, influence over most everything. Look at television. The programming on that, the shows, and the basically in America the 6 multinational conglomerates that own all of these media outlets, and that should tell you something that there's a very few people controlling or have the influence and control over these systems, all of these media systems that are being broadcast in America over 350 million people or whatever that are in the United States. Think about how much power that is and how much influence and how you would be able to slightly skew or shift someone's perspectives or their opinions or whatever about something. Think about it. You have to think about it. And that's where knowing yourself and understanding yourself and also knowing about the energy that you have control over, the value of that energy that you possess and that you produce. It's very important, and it's going to become even more important as we move further or closer and closer or further and further away from this point right here. Remember, we don't want to keep veering, stay on the same path or the direction towards the hellish environment. We want to get back or moving towards a more heavenly type, beneficial type of environment. And to get that done, we're going to have to start understanding ourselves better, start learning about ourselves better, start understanding the value that we actually do have, what the worth of us is. It's not about these pieces of paper and coins that have "In God We Trust." Okay, because if we, in my opinion, if we really trusted in God or something, similar, whatever you would like to call that, whatever it is, creator, source, what have you, the universe, whatever it is, we're going to have to learn more about ourselves and about utilizing utilizing our power, our energy, and for our kids' sake, for our progeny, our future, our family, our kids, our grandkids, great-grandkids, the people in the future. We're going to have to start learning about ourselves, and we've gotten away from that due to a lot of the conditioning that has been going on for a long time, but really for the past little over 100 years, it has really excelled, and has become just more prevalent and pervasive within our society and cultures. That we're getting closer and closer to the hellish negative environment and moving further and further away from what could be a more heavenly and beneficial environment. So we need to understand ourselves. We need to understand what our value really is. And not to get religious or anything. I'm trying to stay away from that, but it's some of these things. Some of them by using a well-known something that is well known. It's easier to make have an example using that. And Jesus said that God dwells within us. God is within us, and it's that spirit. It's the energy that we are able to that we have that spark. Our soul or whatever it is, but we can understand ourselves more and produce more of that positive energy to not only help ourselves but help humanity on a whole, and not be so distracted and selfish trying to accumulate this pseudo energy. We want the authentic stuff, the quality stuff. We want the stuff that there is and can never ever be any facsimile of it. But yet, over the past 100 years and even more, we've been conditioned, we've been tricked basically into putting our belief and our faith into this pseudo energy that has really basically caused a lot of heartache, a lot of deaths, a lot of illness, just basically bad feelings amongst ourselves. So apparently this stuff really doesn't work for the benefit of humanity. It might be a little tougher not using something like this, or even digits on a computer, which that's basically what it is, and that's what's planned on things going to. But any system that operates like the monetary system, we're not going to be free from those bindings of that type of system, and that's what we need to get away from, because it's just not. If we do, and things will go on for a little bit, but we're going to be. It's just going to be a revolution, and we're going to be. Eventually we're going to come back around, and there's going to be a start of another revolution. So we need to get beyond that point, make that helical move where we go around and there's cycles, because there's always cycles, but we need to evolve within those cycles, revolving cycles, so that we don't run into a need for another revolution. We just continue to advance, and still go through some cycles, but evolve past the events, the beginnings that need a beginning of a new revolution. And that would be I guess that could be considered a revolution, is a new way of thinking, a new way to solve our problems, a new understanding of ourselves, a new understanding of our fellow human beings. The suffering, all of the suffering, the human suffering, there are just so many things that we could improve upon, and not really have to, resort to living in shacks with no heat or no air conditioning or no indoor plumbing or anything. All of this could be done without having to resort to, a lower quality of life. But some people would define quality life differently. But you ask a person that only eats a meager one meal a day, that sleeps on the dirt and has no running water, that they have to walk 100 feet or so to get, drinking water or whatever it is, or, things like that. Well, they would probably be more comfortable, in a lot more comfortable in a house that had running water, indoor plumbing, and they had the access to more than one meager meal a day, But that's what I'm saying. The people that are living at that level could be uplifted, and the whole system could be uplifted. Everybody could be uplifted. Now, these wealthy people that have all they could ever imagine and desire, well, they're not going to move up to, I would say, not very much, because they're already up there and they have everything that they've ever desired. However, they are lacking something very important. And apparently, it is empathy, it's compassion, it's the understanding. That's what it gets into. It's apparently they're very selfish. Because if they really did care about humanity, about the government, about their country, or whatever it is, things would be different, and they wouldn't be running the way that they are. This pseudo energy system wouldn't be about to crash. Our planet wouldn't be so out of balance, the ecological system, the balance of nature. It wouldn't be so out of balance. If they really did, have a love for their planet, for their country, for other people. Now, I would argue to say they probably do have a superficial love for themselves, but if they ever went through what's called the dark night of the soul, they probably would realize that all of it's been a big sham, and there's going to be a price that they're going to have to pay eventually. And what I mean by that is that they're going to have to come to terms with their actions and their decisions and the way that they've treated themselves and the way that they've treated other people. So, but yeah, if they really, if there really was that compassion, understanding of these wealthy people beyond any, and this includes the politicians, that we have, at least for our country. Now, there's a few that are really trying to make a difference, but as I said in other installments, the corruption, the influence of that corruption, is just so great, and there's so many that get sucked into it, and the very few that are really trying to make a difference for the better are being smothered, by this darkness, this corruption, and it's a real shame. But yeah, it's we need to make a paradigm shift, and it's not going to happen unless more of us start learning more about ourselves are the human species, and learning, and understanding ourselves and other people within our species, and understanding how, some systems, a lot of systems, and the systems within those systems, they may look and they may smell and they may taste and they may sound, and what have you, like they're really cool and, it's great, but we have to understand that doesn't necessarily mean that it's that much of or any benefit to the planet or the human race in the long run. And what are we trying to do? Just take care of ourselves and not worry about our children, our friends' children, other people's children or whatever, in the environment that we will be leaving them. It doesn't make sense for us not to try to do the best we can to ensure that they have a better environment to live in, because that's what it's all about, right? That's what these religions, send them to Sunday school, send them to this, send them to that. Yeah, there's a lot of good, probably moral teachings in the Bible, but the way those things are being taught, they're not exactly accurate, and they're usually skewed in such a way to benefit, say, the congregation or whatever that are trying to get their members to tithe 10% of their income, or trying to do something like that, or just trying to get, rather than these people,